Boom, and we're live, but we're not actually live today. Thank you for joining us. This is a pre-recorded episode, so feel free to join in chat if you like, but we unfortunately won't be able to respond as we usually do. But this is season 2, episode 36, so we're going to go ahead and kick off, aren't we?
I think so.
Okie dokie.
This will be our last episode of the year, so happy 2024, everybody.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Kind of surreal, ain't it?
Yeah. Long year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But we won't get into that. Anyway, and so as we're going on, we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Dear listener, it is with a profound sense of indifference that I inform you of the near passing of two of your favorite buffoons on the altar of fandoms. Private First Class Naff was nearly shamed to death for claiming that The Last Jedi was the best Star Wars film in a crowded bar in Dallas, Texas. Corporal Movie Man suffered many injuries he sustained from doing the Lord's work and convincing heathens that The Bad Batch is the best Star Wars animated show. However, they nearly escaped the gates of death and are bringing you this episode to you in a semi-timely manner. And now I will thank you for your dearest patience and your investment in the lives of these two men. Yours very sincerely and respectfully, Raglan. Anyway, so back. Hey guys, how you doing?
Welcome
now that
along.
set the tone.
Yeah. We've been working on getting me through Spielberg's filmography, which happened slowly. You know, it's happened slowly. We saved Saving Private Ryan for when I came out to visit you. And I've now seen it twice. And we have lots to talk about in this film. Now this is I'll talk a little bit about what we do here for the uninitiated, and then we'll dive into who chose this film and why. If you guys have been listening for long enough, you can probably guess already who chose this film. So one of us is a Spielberg fan, and the other one is uncultured swine. So
who I will have talk about that because it's because I love hearing how I'm right.
Yeah, well, fuck off. So, what do we do
enough.
here? If you are uninitiated, welcome. We're One with the Films. There is myself. Let's actually maybe get into that a little bit before I dive into what we do here. I'm Naf. I goes on second thought as well. I talk film, TV, movies, Star Wars, all of that stuff. And we do that anywhere you have space to talk about. And One with the Films is also available as a live streamed podcast generally, and it's available to watch and listen to on demand on YouTube or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. So you can always check this episode out a little bit later as well. But we love talking about movies, and I have my beautiful co-host here as well, Mr. K himself, Movie Man Opinions.
How you doing?
Tell me a little bit about you, buddy.
Oh, well, I'm just your LGBTQ nice guy who tries his best. Well, maybe not nice guy. Not the nice guy in the weird connotation, but like
Sounds
in
like
a way
nice guy would
of... Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm just different. I'm not like other guys.
I'm built different.
I'm built different. You understand? Listen, this is the second episode we've recorded today. I'm going to be a little rusty, and I'm trying my best. But here's the thing. I am Movie K Man the Third, and I am here to talk about everything fandom-related, everything art-related, as well as D&D, actual plays, and just ADHD and living as a person. Yeah,
You're a person?
That's me. And
a white man? No!
It depends. It really depends on like sort of where you ask, because either the ADHD or the LGBTQ would definitely get me seen as less than a person, depending on what state we're in. But you know, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
But as a white man, I can at least have a vote and say in Texas, and you know, so.
Moving on. So for the uninitiated,
it hurts because it's true.
For the uninitiated, we're here today for the Weekly Watchlist, and the Weekly Watchlist is where Kay and I force each other to watch our favorite films. So I'll pick one and go, "You haven't seen it? Watch it," and he'll pick one and go, "You haven't seen it? watch it. And that's essentially how it goes. Sometimes we'll also bring on a guest or someone who has better taste than us to introduce us to one of their favorite films. So the whole concept behind the One with the Films podcast is the sharing the love of films, and introducing each other to new things. And if we can do that for you guys as well, then that is like success. That's exactly what we're beautiful. Here for. Yeah, it's our like perfect little slice out of the day. We'll take like an hour-ish of your time for you to hopefully hear some new perspectives on some films that you've either seen or learn about some films you haven't seen yet and go and check them out. But generally, all of our conversations are spoiler-filled. We don't necessarily do a run-through of the film from start to finish, but we are going to talk about the film with the assumption that you've seen it. Now, as we were talking about social media before, if you are following us on Instagram and TikTok and all of those places, we do talk about the film that we're going to be talking about in advance a little bit to give you a bit of time, about a week to watch the film and get used to it, and be, familiar with it before we come to talk about it. Yeah,
just so you can participate in the conversation in the most dynamic and interesting way where you can actually contribute if you've seen it, things there. We just try to make sure that you guys can, this is kind of like a movie club.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching along with us, you can take stuff off of your watch list, and then you too can be told by your friends that you've seen more movies than them.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have recommendations for us to check out as well, you can always reach out to us and let us know, or guests that you'd like us to have on the show. We'd love to connect with them as well, and yourself. So,
including yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, talk to us. We're here for you, okay? It's a
We're
safe
lonely.
Space, unless... I'm kidding.
That's true. I do make this as toxic as possible. That is the goal.
Go back to listen to some of our older episodes.
Listen. The white man's talking. And so now... Sorry.
But
we're really unhinged when there is no audience.
It is what it is, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But that being said, no harm, no foul. If you haven't seen the film and you're happy to dive in, we're not going to kick you out of here. Like, enjoy. You can watch us at any point. Let's kick off a little bit.
Absolutely.
Today's episode is called Right in the Privates. And this
in the privates.
The film of the week is Saving Private Ryan, which is an exciting one. It's an old film.
Absolutely.
I actually chose this film because you hadn't seen it, Kay, which I'm wondering what you have to say for yourself, not having seen one of the most important films of our generation.
Well, especially, for a self-proclaimed Spielberg nut to not have seen this film,
disgusting, honestly. Do you hate yourself?
Honestly,
honestly,
for a while,
yes. Say to yourself, tell me.
Well, I say to myself, I look like the kind of guy who would say that, The Last Jedi is his favorite
I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it. Anyway, I haven't seen this film, okay? This was your choice. You have been, you love this film.
Yeah. Absolutely. This was for a long time. This was close to like one of my favorite films. Up there. I've seen this film probably more times than I can count. It was one of those films that just really resonated with me. When I saw it way back, I saw it when I was in middle school, and it just probably way too young to see it, but still very much it had a huge impact on me. And obviously, Nav, when we started talking about like anything, obviously you weren't as familiar with Steven Spielberg's filmography. We'll get into that, but
yeah, I'm
curious to kind of know what you knew about this film before you even sat down to watch it.
Yeah, well, one of the things with this film in particular, and I remember us talking, one of the first chats we had, one of those long 4-hour chats that we were like, we should record this, right? Like,
for those of you who have been here since day one, we're sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, you are, right? You have to apologize for the...
That's correct. Well, let me get my notes app out, and I will apologize for the various different
thank you.
Atrocities committed by my ethnicity.
I appreciate that. That being said...
You're welcome.
I actually kind of avoided the film, this one. Unlike something like Schindler's List, which I just kind of never got around to. Saving Private Ryan was one that... so growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch war films. Like the violence and the patriotic sense didn't align with my parents' values. So that just wasn't something that was a thing. To the point in which within class, if we were watching stuff for like Anzac Day and stuff, that like would be like either moved out or things like that. You know, like I was the weird kid in the corner that didn't sing the national anthem. You know, like that's the level of shit we had going on. And so like war films weren't something that were really enticing to me at all. And my best friend at the time, when I was sort of like 18, 19, he had been in cadets and all of these things, and he loved it. Like he war films were like his thing, and he got me into some stuff a little bit, and I started checking out a couple of things. And we'd always talked about watching Saving Private Ryan. But we went on a trip together to Queensland, one of the northeastern states in Australia. It's where the Great Barrier Reef is, if you've watched Finding Nemo. But we went there just on a boys trip, and one night they had Saving Private Ryan on TV, and the last act was playing, and I kind of sat and watched a little bit of that with him, and like I kind of saw the ending, and I was like, oh, okay, like I don't really have any need to watch it. Like there's that kind of plot twist ending in the bookends that I was like, okay, well now there's just no like tension. There's no reason for me to watch this film. It's been spoiled. And I think it was only till talking with you that I actually like gave that a second thought and was like, oh, I guess you're right. Like it's a 3-hour long film. Like there's going to be other stuff that happens besides the last 15 minutes. So you made a very good point. Okay.
You know, when you look at the runtime compared to what you've actually seen of the movie, it is maybe there is something there.
Yeah, it's like going into Empire Strikes Back and seeing Vader cut off Luke's hand and go, I'm your father, and going, I don't need to watch the rest of the film. I'm good. I don't need to watch any Star Wars ever again. I know the big moment.
Exactly. Yeah, that was it. You saw the whole Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. And like it also should be reminding you to go back and watch the best one of the 9, which is The Last Jedi. Also the longest.
You're making sure you get that in here because you did forget in an episode recently.
Say nothing. The longest Star Wars film that does the most with its runtime. That should have been longer, honestly.
I can't disagree with you there. But nonetheless, as we go forward. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm very interested, like, as we kind of go through this, with, this film, when I first watched it, my dad had been showing me, because I think we watched Schindler's List before this movie.
You and your dad?
So. Yeah, my dad and I. Like, cool. Not like in a row, but like...
well, it's funny, because like my dad and I watched them in the same order. You're my dad, in the context. We watched Schindler's List first, and then...
That's correct. Like, I took you to
you're my dad, and Spielberg is my grandpa.
That works. I will take this. I will take this order.
I will have any scenario
which means
Ali
Spielberg
is
my dad. But that's fair. That's okay. So yeah, so Spielberg obviously is my dad, and I'll be your dad, and so that'll all work. But ultimately, the thing about Spielberg was like watching this film and Schindler's List at this time. I do hold these as like, it's funny because I feel like depending on what kind of a person you are, different films of Spielberg's filmography, like unlike something where like Martin Scorsese, where I feel like, yes, there are favorite films of his,
and
but
really
a lot
of them
like
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Fair enough. You and I both have the same opinion. But the thing is that I feel like there aren't as many different brands of Scorsese. But I feel like with Spielberg, you have people that will be like Jurassic Park, E.T., and then there will be people that'll be like Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Like, there's different things with him, and for me these are the two that I often think about. Sometimes I'll forget about shit like Indiana Jones and Jaws, even though I love those films so much. It's like, this is ultimately ones that really meant something to me. But going on with it, I'll kind of get into more of like what I appreciate about this film, but that's why I wanted to bring it to you, especially someone who hadn't seen it. I was curious to also get a different opinion because I hadn't seen the film in a while. And so on my top 10 list, it kind of dropped down. I had kind of been avoiding watching the film because I was worried about my political views had changed. My views on war films had changed. And I was worried that I was going to feel that this film was a lot of propaganda and I may not love it as much as I did. And that was why I was really curious to watch it with you, because I was curious to see what your thoughts on the film were in that standpoint, which I'm excited to get to. But before we do, you have some fun facts about this film.
Well, yeah, as we know, like I know a lot about the film because
Absolutely,
I am not uncultured or a swine. But yeah, let's dive into a little bit.
Culture me, baby.
Oh my god, disgusting! Tastes like success and great films. So this film was directed by a little-known filmmaker you may or may not have heard of. His name is Steven Spielberg, and it was released in 1998. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and took home 5 of them. And if you're wondering who wrote that film, it was Robert. Robert wrote that film. It has an 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 4.5 on Letterboxd. My text that I wrote replaced it to 4 and then 2/5.
I saw it too.
So it has a 4 2/5 on Letterboxd. So it's generally beloved as one of the best war films ever put to screen. It has with an iconic an Academy Award nominated score by John Williams, starring Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, alongside a list of incredibly well-known actors. Now, it was shot over about 12 weeks with a budget of around $70 million US, and then grossed $480 million US at the box office. At the time of casting Matt Damon, Good Will Hunting hadn't released and he hadn't won his Oscar. And Spielberg was actually going, I want like an all-American looking boy that's unknown to play my character here. Like, that's what I want. And then in between filming and releasing, Good Will Hunting came out and he won an Oscar for Best Actor. So that definitely would have had like an effect on people getting into the theaters to see this kid. But that's pretty wild. And if you guys will remember an episode that came out a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Hell or High Water, and that had a budget of $12 million to make. And the opening sequence of this film, the Omaha Beach scene, cost just about that much at like 11 million US. So to give you an idea of the scale of this film, it is quite large. Quite large,
like a lot of other things. Anyway, going further on with this, so we have a couple of things that we want to talk about. Obviously, the way that we structure our show is we bring up a couple of things that, like, in broad concepts and sometimes with specific examples, what we like to do and like kind of what stood out to us watching this film. So starting off, Naf, this was something that actually sort of you suggested we kind of start off with and talk about. So I'm curious because I know that you're also a little queasy when it comes to blood, and a lot of queasy with stuff here. Now, I want to know, kind of, obviously this film is, one of the most iconic things about this film is its opening.
Yeah.
That's what every review, when it was coming out, everybody talks about the D-Day opening scene. And I want to know kind of what your feelings were on that when you saw it for the first time, because since you had seen the ending, you didn't know what the fuck this beginning was going to be.
No, I did not. And I remember that late last year, there was a Spielberg film coming out, Fabelmans. And in anticipation for Fabelmans, a local theater was doing a whole Spielberg, what do you call it? Retrospective.
Like review.
Yeah. And one of the films they were doing is Saving Private Ryan. And I was going to watch it in the theaters. And I remember you being like, you may struggle with your queasiness. And I was like, yeah, fair. And surprisingly, like, I think the first time around at your house, it was a bit, like, intense. And then this time I was fine, but there's a lot going on there. And one of the things that I wrote in my Letterboxd review was about how he just refuses to pull any punches in the same way that he did in Schindler's List, which is also horrifying. It's like, I don't think Spielberg has made like a true to like genre like horror film, but he has an eye for things you don't want to look at, be it in like the context of horror, of like the context is what makes it like horrifying, or what you're actually like seeing. And I think that this film dives into a lot of that quite a bit, and also he doesn't pull his punches in those moments, like he humanizes these characters and these soldiers. Every soldier, even the bad guys, have that sort of humanity
even the
to
Germans,
them. And yeah, like it is. Every death is like scary for a different reason, you know, because it's like the characters are being confronted with their mortality every second that the film passes. You don't feel like it's like, you know, the opening scenes of All Quiet on the Western Front. The kids are like, yeah, we're going to war, and then it's like,
fuck.
that's kind of what this is like.
Oh yeah.
And I think that, yeah,
you
to
can
your
see
point,
a lot of Saving Private Ryan inspiration in the newest All Quiet on the Western Front.
yeah, and like to your point before, like I think that depending on how you kind of go into the film, like your perception of that may be different. Like my time watching this, like I did not feel that this was a pro-war film. I think that there are aspects that kind of, you know, tie together, and there are moments in there that it's kind of like, all right, like I'm good, yeah, I get it. But generally I think that when you're on the front lines, it is very much, which, you know what, now that I think of it, it's like the characters that aren't on the front lines are the characters that are like, fuck yeah, war, we're gonna win, like glorious death, and the guys who are there in it are like, no thank you, I want to go home.
Well, you even kind of see that in the Upham character. You kind of see this is a pencil pusher. This is a guy who's, as he says in the film, I study maps.
Yeah,
that's all I do.
Training.
Like, yeah, like that's not what he does. He comes in after they've already captured the beach and then be there. And it's him writing these books about brotherhood and, you know, these things there. It's one of my favorite moments is like, you know, he's talking with all the various different, he's just getting into the squad. And he talks to like Vin Diesel, and it's like, you know, I'm writing a book about like, you know, the bond of brotherhood but that develops between, you know, soldiers during war. And then Vin Diesel's like, brotherhood? What do you know about brotherhood?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like sort of like, get a load of this guy. Like he says it very funny, and it's a funny moment, but like when you really think about what he's actually saying, it truly does resonate. Like this guy thinks he knows about war, but he fucking doesn't. Like he will, and then what does he do at the ending? He's the coward. Like, you know, like also one of the most hated characters in all of cinema. Like it like is this moment there, which I also contest that a little bit. I think that that's one of the brilliant parts of this film is that's exactly what that character would do.
Yeah. Like
and
the whole film has set up that moment. It is perfect.
It goes to that, as you said, Spielberg not pulling punches. The Hollywood version of that moment is him going in there, busting down the door and shooting the German. Nah. And he's a coward and he's afraid.
And it ties into like the like horror or like fear being like almost gripping you in the film. Like that is edited in to a character that we followed for 2.5 hours having a knife slowly buried into his chest, and this kid is just sitting there and listening to it, and he's like, I know I've got a gun, I can go in and save, but I can't. I can't. And like horror.
And he can hear it. Like he can hear it going on in there. Like that's, but back to kind of even the beginning with the things there. When I watched this film for the first time, I remember I was like 12 or something. Yeah. And I was watching it with my dad. And I remember seeing the guy's intestines shot. Like the shot where it's like he's burst open. Like this guy's there.
Screaming, mama, mama.
And he's just screaming, mama. And I remember my dad looking over at me going, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna get like we're getting through it.
Yeah.
Like keep going. But I remember as you were talking about like the first time you see this movie, it hits you.
Yeah, I can imagine what it would have been like when movies like this weren't common to be in the theater.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god.
Well, funny thing about it, this film was infamous at the time. Like infamous, but also it kind of in like a similar way to Schindler's List for a very different kind of conversation. A lot of veterans went to this film not knowing how realistic it was going to be, and people started having PTSD flashbacks in theaters because of this. Like actually, like crisis hotlines started to be done
because of this film, for people to deal with their trauma.
Wow.
One of the like a fun fact is there was a German dubber for the film who was a veteran and was trying to do the German dub and had PTSD and couldn't do it.
Wow.
Like that's the level of, you know, authenticity. And a lot of people will credit Spielberg for being like, now obviously the Normandy landings, the D-Day landings in history, not all of them were this brutal, but like Omaha Beach certainly was, and which is the one portrayed in the film, which was incredible, like has been raved for its historical accuracy. And that's what I think separates this from a lot of films that I think try to do something similar. Is this isn't excessive for the sake of excessive. It feels authentic. Like it feels like Spielberg's not trying to overdo it, in my opinion, like somebody like Tarantino would. I feel like Spielberg is simply trying to say this is what it was.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest parts to that tie into, particularly, like I said, on that first point of, like, you know, things that are like horrifying and real, and like there's no doubt in my mind that some of the ideas that come up at the start of the film are from people's stories. Like I have no doubt in my mind that somebody was yeah, you know, I was on Omaha Beach and I looked down and I looked up and there was a guy with no arm and he was trying to find his arm and then he picked it up and walked off with it. Like he was just in shock and he's like, oh, there's my arm. Like, yeah, that stuff happened. And I think that in this film, when you see machine guns come out or like high caliber weaponry, you see the effect that it has on our meek little human bodies. Like, and then some, you know, like I think it's particularly in the last sequence where all of the guys are on the tank and they come over with the machine gun and start shooting at the tank. Like that is oof, you know, like there's a body that both the legs and the arms and the head is shot off and it's just the torso left. Just a nugget.
It's insane. Like that scene and just the brutality of it. It's what I think, again, as you said, this isn't a pro-war film, in my opinion. It might be a bit pro-America. That I will cede.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's Spielberg's intention. I think that might just be a byproduct from him making empathetic characters.
Yeah.
But even then, I would say I will make an argument. I don't think it is. It's certainly not anti-American, but it's also not pro. I think it's kind of American neutral. It's more about the people.
Yeah.
It's just sort of this is where they were in the war. And I think that the film being anti-war is, I think it is. It just shows the effect that it has on these kids. It shows the effect on the mothers, on the people back home. I mean, a scene that didn't, I mean, I guess it kind of needed to be in the movie, but it's a scene that's so short, but it's so effective, is the scene where those letters, and talking about horror, this is a different version of horror. It's these letters being written to all the people of that basically we just saw die, and being like, here's all these people transcribing those and arguably possibly even making stuff up to at least that was always the impression I got. I don't know if that was the same way, or not, was that they're trying to make it sound heroic for the families.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to go, hey, like he hopped off the boat and was shot instantly
and died. Yep. You know, like it's just these people that they needed to tell them this is kind of what happened. And I love the overlapping. It's such a simple thing, but it's the overlapping dialogue. It's the, you know, the loss of Lee and others like, and we understand about you want to know as much as possible. Like it gives you that sense of genuineness, but also the kind of
this is a job. Yeah,
this is a job.
Yeah,
all these people do is sit here. And as I was rewatching it the other night, the one thing that amazed me, and this might transition us perfectly into our next little thing, was I love that scene because you're seeing the woman who, as this dialogue is surrounding her, is actually a shot that never cuts away. It's her just sitting at this table and looking at this letter, kind of looking at it, confused. We don't know why she's confused. We don't know why this thing. She kind of looks at other things there and kind of pulls out another letter. And then kind of goes up to someone else's desk, pulls out 2 more letters, and then goes to some sort of office where we don't hear what is actually occurring. Then we go into the scene with, hey, a surprise cameo from Bryan Cranston. And you see them come in and explaining about that basically today the mother's getting 4 telegrams that 4 of her sons are killed.
It's 3, isn't it? And the 4th is...
I'm sorry, yes, 4th, 3 telegrams. Sorry. Yeah. Part of the story that this was
you don't know this
on
film very well, do you? I mean, it makes sense since like
you.
I invited you to watch it for the first time.
Fair enough.
It's okay, don't worry.
You know, I am the
it happens to the
one.
best of us. You are.
Absolutely, you're right. But yeah, so I guess going into that, like the horror that Spielberg does with it comes down to the sound, comes down to which also, sorry, cool fun thing that I think you'll appreciate because you love this kind of shit. The sound designers specifically, well, they didn't want to use any sounds that already had been sort of used in war films. Like they didn't want you to come across that like traditional like sound that's been in a sound library for however long. So they
didn't want the Wilhelm scream when Tom Hanks dies.
Exactly. Is sort of thing there. They wanted to genuinely create a lot of that. So all of these sounds I think were captured like from like going back and in like capturing it modern.
Yeah.
But one thing from a design standpoint, what they felt was at the beginning of the film, you don't know any of these people. You don't know any of these things. So what they did was they wanted you as an audience to fear exactly what you were talking about. Fear the horror, fear these bullets, fear this thing. So they focused on bullet impacts, sounds. Like if you're hearing it, it's a lot of the whizzing and the bam, like as opposed to the finale of the film, where they're like, now you love these characters, you've been with them for this entire journey. We don't want to focus necessarily so much on how each character is dying. We want to focus on the actual shooting of the guns. So the bullet impacts are a lot less prominent, but you hear like the cocking of the gun or the things there. That's how the sound designers wanted to represent that. So I thought that you might appreciate that. I thought that was just kind of a fun, interesting thing.
Yeah. And I think on like bullet impacts as well, before we dive into like that sort of next moment, we'll talk about a couple of other things. Like I think the last thing that wraps up the first point is like, how the film handles death of anyone. There are particular standouts, but I think that the moments drag out. It is like I said in All Quiet on the Western Front, that scene in the pit. Like everything is that. Every death in this film. And there are a couple of standouts to me of like the one where there's a soldier who gets shot in the helmet and he's like, takes the hat off, looks at the helmet, he's like, oh my god, and then looks up and he's like shot, and I'm just like, oh my god, dude, it is like that stuff is happening. And again, in the opening scene of Tom Hanks rolling to his right to talk to the guy on the telephone, and then roll back to shoot, and then roll back to the guy on the right and turn his body over, and his face is gone, and it's like, ooh.
Yep.
You have Vin Diesel's character's death, which is a 5-minute long sequence while they're pinned down. You've got obviously the knife in the gut from later. Like all of these moments. One of the big ones is the medic. What's the medic's name?
Oh shit. Now you're gonna have to. Now you're putting me on the spot here because I know it's Giovanni Ribisi is the actor.
Yeah.
Arwen Wade and it's not Caparzo. It's,
I think it is Wade.
Yeah, Wade. Arwen Wade.
Yeah. So another one that I knew that you didn't.
Fuck you.
Yeah, but his death in the moments of like, they're like, we're gonna be okay, you're the medic, tell us what to do. He's like, is it like, let me see, and he's like, oh look, let me put my finger on it, and they put his finger on it. He's like, that's my look, and he just knows, and then he just looks at him, he's like, I could use a bit more morphine, and then just like give it to him, like like that dude just,
that's also just such a dramatically ironic scene of it being the medic. It's like the worst person for them, like it's just such a powerful moment with that, and being like him knowing his own death.
Yeah.
Like that's just and then obviously you have that moment where he's crying for his mom.
Yeah.
Which is, again, I go, how can you say this is a pro-war film? Like, looking at that, that is not glamorous. That is not, like, you know...
Like, I agree with you there, and I think that on the previous point we were talking about of like that scene of them writing the letters, I think that depending on your perspective going into that, you could see it a couple of different ways. One is, okay, they're writing letters because everybody died in glorious battle, yay, but I didn't see it that way. I very much saw it as exactly what we were talking about, which is like, this is heartbreaking that it feels like these people died for nothing, and they're making this whole thing about it, you know? And I'm like, I know that this person didn't die in glorious battle. He died with his intestines poured out on his side, crying for his mum. Like,
change the music in that scene. It's a horror moment. It's like that scene, as you put it, in All Quiet on the Western Front, where they're spraying down the uniforms, and it's that moment of like, oh yeah, they're just reusing the ones that they sent into battle, because they don't have enough clothing. And it's like, it's that thing of going, and so going on to like what I think. So as a standpoint, is there anything you want to cover in the horror aspect?
No, I think that like covers everything. Yeah, and like we said, it's horror not in the sense of like horror genre, but like showing horrifying,
horrifying images.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that does kind of move into our next point, which is very much focused on like the direction. You know, like we got Steven Spielberg who's put this together, and these sequences that I'm talking about, or these scenes and these moments, don't exist without the sheer scale that comes from this film in its set pieces. Which I'd love to hear you talk about a little bit.
Yeah, like I guess in some of the questions I have for you, but like I guess kind of my feeling on this film is this film feels like an odyssey. Like there's no, like I feel like there's often times where you're watching something and I can think of a couple examples like 1917 or All Quiet, where it just feels like you're there. I guess going with Spielberg's direction here and kind of this concept there, what I feel with this film, when you think about films that like really captivate you and really bring you into this like moment, I feel Saving Private Ryan is one of those that, like, again, that D-Day sequence, like you feel like there's often times where I'll be sitting in the theater and I'll go, I bet those resets were a bitch, or like the, oh, well, that was a cool sequence, or a thing there.
You look at things, I know you only had one take.
Yeah, like where it's like, kind of a, all right, yeah, you really struck here. This is one of those films that I look at it still and I'm like, I really don't know how the fuck they did this. I'm like, this is like, I'm sure it all, like I've seen documentaries on how they did it and things there, but it's just, it feels so real and so massive that there's no point in this film that I don't believe it. And I think that that's what's so brilliant about it. But beyond that, obviously this film won for best direction at its time. Like it was Spielberg's second best director win, and of his only two. And what I felt with this win of his, I feel it's incredibly deserved. You and I talked briefly about this. The way that I put like Schindler's List, I think is perfect because it's a combination of everything, and like the writing is like on par with the acting, is on par with the directing, the product, like everything is working at the best possible thing. Here, I think that particularly with the writing versus Spielberg's direction, his visual storytelling and his ability as a director is on full display here.
Yeah.
I think it goes 75-25 with regards to like 75% direction, 25% script. Like, again, even that concept of what I just talked about, like that scene of the woman getting up and moving, it didn't have to be one shot. It didn't have to be one setup. He's just so... Spielberg, to me, is famous for blocking. He'll do these long takes, but it's just so expertly blocked that it's almost like... I remember us watching this film in my room, and us literally, there was a shot that we both were like, the amount... Yeah, I think you and I literally were like, fuck you, Steven. like where
See,
it
I
was.
will never
'cause
do this.
It was that shot of it was like towards the beginning of the final battle where it's like a super tight close up on like an M1 Grand or something, and it was like a cock that not a cock, which would be a very different film. That's Shaving Privates. But
I hate you.
anyway, but basically he cocked the gun, and then you see it pan up to the guy's face with a cigarette, and there's a window in the background, perfectly over his shoulder, out of focus. Rack's focus, Upham's out on the bridge, running towards, and then he goes, "Hey, Upham, hustle up," and it's perfect. But it feels like it just randomly happened, but it feels so orchestrated, and you're just like, how do you achieve the perfect shot and make it feel like it was improv? Like, how do you do that? Like, that is so intricate. And that's where I think like this film really thrives, is it has that interesting sense of pacing. It's a very ensemble piece, and I'm curious to know what you feel about this, because when we initially started talking way back at the beginning of this, you thought Spielberg was kind of like, that's the answer that everyone gives.
Yeah.
But you had only seen like 3 Spielberg things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know what you feel now, like, especially with regards to this film, but obviously kind of going with that.
Yeah, well, having seen a lot more of his films now, like, I can really confidently say that he's incredibly overrated. No, like, he's one of the goats, man. And it, like, you can see very much why, you know, like, similar to, like, it was that conversation of, it was Jonah Hill talking about Scorsese, where he was like, he's one of the best because he just knows. He always knows the right decision. No matter what happens on the day, everything's ruined. He's like, okay, we'll do this instead. And it just works. I can very much imagine that Spielberg is the same. And there was a thing that, I can't remember if it was you telling me this or something else, but wasn't there a moment where he doesn't pre-plan his shots, he goes in early on the day to set it up?
Well, I think it was on this film. Like, typically he does storyboard a lot of his stuff. Like, that's typically his process. But because of this film, I think it was because of the way it was scheduled, because I think the script ended up coming out much better and schedules lined up, that he had to launch into production a little bit earlier than he would have done the prep for. But he would like walk into the locations and he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to actually not pre-plan this. But because of a lot of that, he would show up on the day and now see these shots. Like the whole opening sequence, I believe, as he said, he like improv'd it every single day. He basically was moving them up the beach slowly but surely. And how long we were till done with the sequence was literally measured by how far in the set they are up the beach. Like, and so, to my understanding of that story. But yeah, like he would come in and do this stuff, and just kind of the way his mind works was he would be able to, you know, get that done. And I found that so interesting, you know?
I feel like there's something really powerful about when you're watching the stuff that he puts in camera and the feeling that he's able to transmit with how he set up the shots, particularly with I said how he uses like his blocking and stuff. I think there was one sequence we were talking about just beforehand, which is as Vin Diesel's character is shot down and they're kind of trying to get to him, but they can't because they're pinned down. Upham tries to move over, and the camera is kind of got Upham in camera, and they're in the building with the family. And as he steps out to run over, that we come out a little bit, and it just brings the bell tower into the shot, and it's just in the top corner, and your eye is drawn directly to it. And my heart sank, where I was like, he's gonna get shot. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, just go. And it just hangs there. It's like, move. And he's like, okay. And he goes back in. I was like, whew, I can breathe. And yeah, there's no doubt that like I can't imagine a world where that stuff isn't, you know, like intentional to like a man with his brain.
Like, it's whether it was like decided like, oh, I went into this day knowing that was a shot I wanted, or it just ended up in the editing room that was like it wasn't intended that way, but I really like this. It's why this film, again, I think Spielberg is always a great example. A lot of creators do this, and I think a lot of films are better for it, the ones that do. if he feels like a very comprehensive filmmaker where it's
Mm-hmm.
like everybody is at their A game, especially in films like this, where like I think some of his S tier films. I think that what's so cool about this film and like what really resonates with this in general is you see this man just with this craft of that kind of stuff. Like even one of the things that I love about his direction in the beginning, and you probably picked up on this in the second time I told you to look for it when we watched it the first time, was when you're first watching this film, especially for us where a lot of these actors aren't still household names, or they're not, like they may have been 90s, like big in the 90s or things there, but we don't know them. When you watch the film the first time, yes, you see Tom Hanks in that boat, but Mellish is in that boat with him. So is the sniper. So is all these people there. But the first time you're watching this film, they're intercut with a bunch of random extras. So you don't know which of these are going to end up being characters later. You assume they're all on that same level, which isn't a thing, in my opinion, that you don't realize how brilliant that is until you watch it a second time.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, these characters were right there the entire time. But like one of my favorite details is like, it's that shot of Tom Hanks where it's like the lifts up the the canteen and you see the eyes. And then it starts backing out. Mellish is one of the people that throws up. Like, and it's just an unromantic. You don't just pan over to his face, see him wipe, and like, this is going to be a main character sort of thing. It's just, he's just one of these cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And it's just, you don't have to do it that way. And that's what I think is so brilliant about this film, is he does a lot of stuff that he doesn't have to do.
Mm.
And even like one of the other battles, which he easily could have gone and shot the same way he did the rest of them, was the one where they go and attack the machine gun pit at the radio tower. And it's all done through the scope of Upham at a safe distance. And to me, I'm like, oh, you cheeky fucker.
Yeah.
Like that's like,
It's
that's where you get a little bit of that filmmaking. Like, little sauce.
Yeah, and it's very much the choice to have the camera almost play a character, like the audience is a character. Like we're experiencing it the same way they are. And that's very prevalent in the opening sequence where like characters are falling over and the camera's falling over. Characters are falling into the water and the camera's falling into the water and coming back out and going back under. And like you're part of it.
Visceral.
You are part of it, yeah. And I think that, particularly that stuff too, the shots through the scope. I was thinking that when I was watching this most recent one, I was like, Upham stays back, and you go, and even to the point of we're there, we are Upham there, we have no idea what's going on, and then even him running up to it and going, oh, dude, like we have the same reaction he has to seeing Wade taken out.
And going to that, like, I think that, but all that aside, I feel like here's the thing, and going into our third point, I think this film, this is one thing that I really wanted to talk about this film, because it's a question I really had for you, but I guess I'll give kind of my preface to it. All of this is great, but we've seen that kind of in war films like 1917 or things like that, where it's like, oh, excellent blocking mixed with incredible camera work, interesting characters-ish, and enough to keep you interested in this film. But I don't think that's what makes this film. Like, because it's bothered me for a long time, because I would see stuff like Dunkirk or stuff like 1917, and for a long time I was like, what is it about Private Ryan that makes it my favorite war film? Like, why does this work in a better way? Well, fair enough. But like, why does it work really well to me in a way that, in my opinion, not a lot of war films did? And ultimately, that was when I realized that script is actually really fucking good. It's just very subtle. I mean, maybe not everything in the script, but like a lot of that script is a very subtle idea of the decent thing. That word, it's so particular. and it's this phrase that keeps being uttered by so many different people.
Yeah.
Like, well, I guess that'd be the decent thing to do, eh, Captain?
Mm.
It's kind of like the renewal act, or the sort of renewal fund in the Batman, where it's like, oh, it's this sort of, the renewal, this idea of like, oh, kind of that theme, but everybody's kind of making fun of it.
Yeah.
Because it's the source of corruption, that you don't expect the film to actually have that renewal theme, to actually use it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of subverting how you're supposed to feel about that word.
Mm.
I think the same thing happens in Private Ryan with the word decent, where it's a lot of people being like, well, I guess that'd be the decent thing to do, huh, Captain? Like, sort of this almost making fun of that. Is that concept even there? Like, or it's like Caparzo being like, the least we can do is take this girl to the next town. Like, the decent thing to do would be taking her to the next town. It's like, well, we're not here to do the decent thing.
Yeah.
We're here to follow fucking orders. Like, and I don't know. I wanted to know what you thought, because obviously we watched this film together, but I'm really curious to know, when it comes to that aspect of this film and kind of the moral conundrums that kind of even the film itself represents, like the whole story. I'm curious how you felt about that upon your first watch to your second watch. I want to know what you think.
Well, I think that there are a bunch of key scenes within the film that ask that question. Like, our characters are saying things like, we're not here to do the decent thing. Like, they are well aware that they are killing other human beings. Like, they know. And I think that they're questioning that about themselves quite a bit, and it prompts them to question like other aspects of themselves too. Like, one of my favorite scenes in the film is like in the church scene, where, and again, also fantastic like blocking there as well, shooting Wade through that like bookshelf, I think it is, and he's telling the story about his mum and how they're just talking about, she has, think about it, like, Wade has a mum, and it's like, I have a mum too, like all that kind of, not Wade, but Ryan, think about his mother, like she's got 3 other sons that died, blah blah, and like, I have a mum too, she'd be sad if I died. And then he's thinking about his mum seriously, and he's like, kind of the knowledge of, I'm probably gonna die out here, and I didn't take all the time I could have got. When she wanted it, I didn't give it to her, and I'm actually probably not gonna have the chance to do that again. Which I think is a very real aspect of grief that every person experiences. We're all going to go through that in our lives. And no matter what, it's like Andrew Garfield says, like, no matter how long you have, it's never enough time.
Oh, yeah. And especially for that to be represented by war, where it's like, oh, people being ripped from you.
Like, and when you think about it from the perspective of, like, us, we will experience that, parental kind of grief. I know that it's something that you've experienced as well. But the way that this film talks about it is flipping the cards on that. Of like, okay, I may think I didn't get enough time with my mum because now she's gone. But the flip side of that is, I don't think I gave enough time to my mum because now she doesn't have me anymore. Which is it's such the other side of the coin,
and it's so powerful when you see so many of these characters. The last thing they're doing is sort of crying out for their mother. Is like, I mean, you see that, and a lot of people will talk about that's a very real thing. Apparently, when people are on the brink of death, very real thing to call out to their moms. And it's terrifying that way, and I feel like the concept of kind of, and I think where you're kind of going with this is like pairing that with this idea of these people kind of constantly, because the whole premise of the film is all this entire squad of people, like 7 people, is going to go save one guy, no matter how many of them die along the way, to get this one bastard from here back home, and then return to the war. Like, these guys have to basically go and give this guy a free ticket out of here.
And then they're going to stay and probably die.
And then they have to go and stay. My wonderful wife says that imagine that poor bastard's therapy bills.
Mm.
And especially with the way this pans out, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I think going to that, I guess I want to kind of come back to you with that question there. Like, how did you feel? Like, I don't know how much of that part you knew about the film, and like, I'm curious to know how that kind of, as it evolved, because you saw it at a very different point in your life than I did, and I'm just kind of like interested to see what that felt like to you.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, what you kind of took away from that.
Yeah, well, like I said, like, I have never had any sort of patriotic connection to anything ever, you know? And so I experience films like this through the lens of generally entertainment. And yeah, like, I think that's kind of where those propaganda-y kind of feelings I don't necessarily like align with usually, because I'm just
sure,
it makes sense, right? But yeah, I suppose that I didn't expect to be impacted by this film in the ways that I was, in terms of, like we said, how very real they make things, you know, and down to, like we were saying, aspects of how visceral some of the like gore is, but then also making it real in like how much time they spend with these characters talking about, I was a school teacher, like that's what I did, and now I'm just here, you know, like, yeah, it's a lot.
In going with that, for me, like, what I always take away from the film is, by the time you get to the ending, one of the things that I love so goddamn much is the moment when they do find Ryan. The twist of, here they are, they get all the way to this point, and contrasted with the first Ryan that we meet, which also
Hilarious.
Maybe the bit is perfect.
It is, yeah.
No, it's dark. It is
a bit of
humor.
levity in the film, though. It's like, it's not you, and he's like, but it's like, shut up, it's not you. But you also do get it from Nathan Fillion's perspective.
But it also hurts. Like,
Yeah.
it's funny, you're laughing, but then for me, it always happens this way. I'm always laughing at the part where he's like, and Nathan Fillion's timing is perfect, where it's like, you know, my brother's still in grammar school. You're James Ryan. Yeah, James Francis Ryan from Iowa. James Frederick Ryan, Minnesota. And just his whole thing there. And it's like, what does that mean? My brothers are okay? Yeah, I'm sure they're fine. And just kind of getting up and just go. And it's like,
he's still in the shock. He can't get out of it.
He can't get it. But then it's like, and then you get hit with that tang of pain when it's like, I got to get home right now. I got to get home. And you know, this guy's not going to be able to go home to check.
Yeah.
He just had to live with the concept of his brothers dying, and now he has to go on. But then contrast that with the end, when we finally meet Matt Damon, and his moment where he goes, where he talks about the fact that, you know, why do I deserve this? They all fought as hard as me, and then, you know, even the guys going, hey, asshole, 2 of our guys already died trying to find you, all right? And it's this thing of going, you know, him going to, you know, them saying, like, you know, what is that what we're supposed to tell your mother when they send her another folded American flag? And then him saying, well, tell her when you found me, I was with the only brothers I had left, and there was no way I was going to desert them now.
Yeah.
And I think it brings, and yes, you can go rah patriotism. I don't think that's what that moment was. That moment was very human, of, as we've seen with these other guys.
Anything else. This is it.
This is it. And I'm not about to abandon the people who have become my brothers.
And it's like, if I go home, all I have is grief.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that we think about the immense amount of pressure that he would feel getting home and being the only son left, and having that from your mum kind of put on everything that I didn't get a chance to do with your other 3 brothers because I lost them. This is my baby. Like, I'm coming back to this. That would be intense and difficult.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, going even to the fact that then Oh, the earn this moment. But even before then, one of the ones that always gets me is that Tom Sizemore monologue where he's like, a part of me is like, what has the kid done to deserve this? We all just go like, we leave him and fine, let's go. But then the other part of me thinks, what if we stay and actually make it out of here? Maybe one day we can look back and think that Saving Private Ryan was the one thing we were able to pull out of this god-awful shitty mess.
Yeah, the one decent thing.
Yep. And I love that moment because that character that, we've seen them almost shoot each other. We have that whole scene that we didn't even talk about like the goddamn like German, which is also a huge part of the film to me, is another point of being like, I don't think this is exactly pro-American. They were ready to fucking kill an unarmed prisoner of war. Full on ready to just fucking end this guy.
And it had to be that guy.
Yeah. And then come to find out they were right. The guy was like Edward Burns was right, where he's like, unless it gets picked up by his own people at first and thrown back into circulation. And it's like, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And he's the guy, he's the one who did it.
He's the one that fucking shot Tom Hanks. And
yeah.
I love that scene where he does say the earn this moment. And I do think it's actually just kind of very interesting that it turns out at the very end, the only people that live are, Ryan, and Upham.
Yeah.
And it's just of that group that those are the only ones that lived. And it's the one guy who was like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going to go back and fight the war. And guess what he's got to live with now? And then you have
imagine
the one
his
guy
therapy bills.
Exactly, right? Like Reiben is one of the most interesting characters I think in the film because he is the smart ass. Yeah, he is kind of fun, but it's like he's the character that also says what we're all thinking at all times. But I don't know, I guess I'm just curious, like I can talk about what I love about this film for hours in that regard, but I'm just curious about what stuff of that kind of resonated with you beyond the general concepts. I'm really interested in, were there moments that really affected you?
Well, I think that it's aspects of all the stuff that we've just talked about, but then there's also the flip side of that where these guys have been here for so long that things are just natural to them, things feel normal to them. And there was one scene in particular that kind of plays on the opposite side of the decent thing, which is kind of post them coming across the people that landed in the glider. And they have the conversation with the pilot, which I think is it's really heartbreaking because they're going in and very much they're just trying to get let's go and find out. We just want to find this kid, and there's this guy here who's falling to pieces, going like, everyone died in this glider but me, and he needs someone. And they're kind of like, yep, cool. Can we get those dog tags? Like, it's really painful. And once they get the dog tags, again, it's that scene of them going through and basically you can't not think about the fact that every one of those tags was on a human body. And it's not a few, it's not like 5-10 tags. It's like 100 in that bag. Like,
oh, easy.
And they're just going through it, and as they're like, nah, not him, ha ha ha, and then you've just got the soldiers walking past, and it's intercut scenes of people reacting to what they're doing, which is again horrifying. Like, and so that kind of stuff really stuck with me as well.
Yeah, well, like going with that, it's even like the medic looking at them and going, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, it's these people that, and you gotta imagine those guys that are listening to this, they're listening to see if their friends are those tags.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are like walking by, did my buddy make it? Like, I haven't seen him, and I don't know, and this would, maybe, like, at least I know, and it's just such a painful scene. And I think Tom Hanks really plays that scene well when he's kind of laughing at the jokes that his guys are making, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a funny comeback or things there. But then as soon as the medic calls him out on it, you see his guilt.
Yeah.
And you see everything just occur to him in that moment. And then he's like desperate to almost earn, like, I think I'm sorry, I'm just realizing this as you said it. It's almost as if like it's not to earn this, it's him realizing how far he's sunk. If he was laughing and doing that, and almost like, I need to find this guy now in order to earn something of me
save
back.
myself, save my humanity.
Like, it's not about, like, because as he says in the one of, as you mentioned, the school teacher monologue, he's like, Ryan, I don't care about Ryan. I don't give a shit. But if finding him gives me the right to go back to my wife, then that is what I want. And I feel like in that moment, that's sort of, he's desperate to have that because he realizes how far he's gone. That he can sit here and listen to that laugh and looking at the names on these bodies and not really comprehend the tragedy of what he holds in his hands.
Yeah.
It kind of is even a little reminiscent, not as powerful, but in a similar way, of the Schindler's List, pendant moment. Of like this Nazi pin with gold represents one person that I could have saved and I didn't. And I feel like it's a similar-ish moment.
Yeah, I could have got one more.
Yeah. And were there any additional scenes that you wanted to cover or talk about?
Nah, like, generally that covers, like, most of them. You know, I think that there are other iconic scenes within the film that we've sort of covered already anyway. Like, I don't see, for example, Upham's, what's the word?
Cowardice
at the end of the film as anything beyond just what I would expect. If you put me and you in with them right now, we would have done the exact same thing, you know? Like,
we wish we wouldn't, but I think the reason people hate that scene is they know that they would.
Yeah, I know for a fact that in a zombie apocalypse, or if, like, we went to war that I was conscripted for, I would die very quickly, or otherwise, you know, like, I wouldn't function there.
It's so hard because you look at that and it's like, you know, just imagining people doing this, and it's so tough. Like, again, one of the scenes you mentioned earlier that I guess I kind of want to, one of them I want to hit on. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I guess two things. The sniper's cool. We'll be talking about that in a second. But like, I really feel the Mellish's death scene is so agonizing. I have never feared knife combat more than I have in that scene, because it's just so unbearably realistic. Like the thing of going, oh, it's fighting on this end. Now they're rolling over. Oh, now he pulled a knife. It's going to be, he has the upper hand, but then it shifts. And it's like, oh, he's going to get control over it again. There's going to be something that happens that turns the tide. But nope, we just watch this knife. And you even hear Mellish being like, okay, let's stop. Like, and it's so, and then you just see the, like, you know, and you just hearing it and just going, like,
no music. That's probably the other thing that I would mention is, like, the score by John Williams is, like, iconic in this film. It's very good, but it's not used much. There's a lot of silence.
It's like literally like the beginning and the end is where that but that's just how powerful John Williams be.
Yeah,
it's just, you know, I will say, I still maintain one of the most clever uses of music in this entire film was when Vin Diesel gets shot and there happens to be a broken piano next to him, and he puts a hand down on it, and you hear this kind of but it's like, it's perfect because it's so dissonant, but it really adds this like music. It's like, it's diegetic, but it feels so, you know, it feels perfect for the moment of the movie.
Yeah. The other one
it's
is
almost like he went dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just
the other one
just
is
gets shot.
like record player that's playing with the French lady
Oh
singing,
God.
and Upham translating it, and then being like, "I find myself confusingly aroused by you right now, Upham."
And which is like fair. Like I do love that line of I find
Upham,
myself
you radiate
confusing,
twink energy.
curiously aroused by you. I do feel Mellish also has very much bi energy. Like, you know, he definitely has that vibe to him. Same thing with Vin Diesel in this movie. Like they have very much bi couple energy.
Well, Vin Diesel is gay,
but
so that makes sense.
fair enough. But the thing is that I really feel that is Vin Diesel gay?
No, there was a YouTube video that came out a little while ago that was trying to put some evidence together to claim that, and I was referencing that. If you look at him through that lens a little bit, you could probably guess, but we shouldn't
it
project
started
onto
to track. It started to track a little too well.
I'll send you the video afterwards.
It feels like a very closeted straight man.
Yep, yeah. Like through the lens of toxic masculinity avoids.
Yeah. I think we need to mark this for TikTok because I feel like people need to see my visual putting shit together. But anyway, wrapping up with it, I think that, you know, one of the other characters that always just stands out to me, mainly because, you know, snipers are, you can't resist a good sniper in a movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You
They're always
just can't.
badasses. They always are.
They always are. It's just such a particular thing in there. It's like, but that scene in the clock tower, not just the sniper battle, but the other clock tower scene where now he's the one in the clock tower.
Yeah.
And he's going there and he's just taking out everybody. And then all of a sudden you just see that turret just crank up. And it's that moment of, well, fuck. It's truly the amount of times I've been playing Battlefield, and that has happened to me, are innumerable. I'll just look and just go, please tell me you didn't sit, poof, and just yawn. But I guess that's sort of kind of like, at least with this film, what always resonated with me. And so I am curious where this kind of lands with Spielberg's filmography with you. Like,
oh yeah, I've got my list right here.
Oh, phenomenal! I'm because I was curious when we watched it. You had a very distinct opinion.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see if it's similar.
I would say that like when I did my review for it last night, I actually started it at 4 stars instead of 5 when I gave it 5 originally, and because there were just some things that stood out to me as just like liking a little bit less, and it's just a few of the monologues of some of the characters where they just they felt a little like heavy-handed sometimes, but at the same time I was
fair.
like, for the time, like all like it just and then also I have like a Tom Hanks hatred, so when when like for example they're about to shoot each other over the letting the guy go, and Tom Hanks is doing nothing, and he just starts kind of going like, what's the thing? What was the thing again? And this is what we do. And he just has this kind of like monologue where I was like, it just feels like a little like overacted sometimes. Where I was like,
I could see that.
Yeah, there are so many moments where it feels so natural, and then there are other moments where I'm like, oh, I'm watching like a play right now. Like not a movie, like a play is what I'm watching. And then I was kind of tossing back and forth, and I ended up actually still moving it back up and giving it 5 stars again anyway, because like it just like the things that the film does well so heavily outweigh the little tiny things, you know. And I don't look at 5 stars as perfect, no flaws, because I don't think anything is really there. I'm just like, is it one of the greatest pieces of art ever put to screen? Yes, it is. So it's a 5-star film for me. But my favorite films from Spielberg's filmography, which is on my Letterboxd as a list if anybody wants to check it out.
Shameless plug.
E.T.'s my number 1 Spielberg film still.
Gotta do it.
Schindler's List is second, and Saving Private Ryan is third, and then Jurassic Park and Tintin.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and then Last Crusade, then Raiders of the Lost Ark, then Fabelmans, then Jaws, then Terminal, then Lost World, then Crystal Skull, then Temple of Doom, then West Side Story, abysmally at the bottom, as a movie I despise and will never watch again, and I'm sad that you made me watch.
You can't be perfect.
Well, I mean, you've liked everything I've shown you, so that says otherwise. And I've turned you on things you didn't like.
I feel like I've raised West Side Story a couple of stars in your own. Like not in your own personal enjoyment, but I'm gonna take it as a win.
How?
I got you to rewatch it. I got you to watch.
Okay, so like... for the listeners, the scenario here was I started watching the movie one night and I was like, nah, I hate this. I hate everything about it, and I just turned it off. I watched maybe the first 5 minutes. I was like, nah, cringe, not my vibe. And then Kay was like, rewatch it, watch the whole thing, and I watched it from start to finish, and I was like, I see the appeal. No, it's a no from me.
And that's fair.
You made me watch it.
Movies are subjective. You know, art is subjective. You can have the wrong opinion. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's funny is this time in particular, it was you who had the wrong opinion, and so it's okay. You know, it's all right.
No, listen,
but it's okay. This isn't an episode about West Side Story, so let's just agree that it's horrible and move on. No, but yeah. So I'm working through. I've still obviously got a significant amount of his films to go, which I'm sure we'll do a bunch on here too. So if you haven't seen a lot of Saving Private Ryan, if you haven't seen a lot of the
sequels to Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, well, all you have to do is watch Dunkirk in reverse, and you're good.
Exactly.
But yeah, if you haven't seen a lot of Spielberg's films, follow along because I probably will be watching more for the podcast.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else or any final notes you want to mention on the film?
One, I'll talk with you more offline because I feel like it doesn't necessarily go. I guess I'll go my rewatch of the film, watching it with you, because I was curious to see how I was going to feel about it later on in life when I'm a little bit more critical of both the military and various different things. You know, how was I going to feel about this? There's just something about this film. Spielberg has this remarkable quality. I think it's why he remains to be. It's similar to Greta Gerwig and people like that, where there's just something when you watch one of his films that just it has something that very few films do, and you can't put. I don't think I could put my finger on it if I tried. Like I feel like another filmmaker could copy this film, shot for shot, beat for beat, and it wouldn't have that. Like I don't know what it is about the factor of it. It actually went up a couple spots in my top 100. Again, it's always been in my top 10, but it went up a couple of notches. Just because I admire what it took for him to do what he did with this, like what on a technical level, on a skill and craft and prowess level. It's just, this is why I was so frustrated with a lot of Spielberg films, because you watch a movie like this and you see when this man cares, when this man wants to. Not that he doesn't in those other films. I think that he wants to, but it's like there are films where clearly Spielberg cares. This is one of them. This is when you get S tier Spielberg films.
Yeah, I get that. He put his whole
Spielberg-isy?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where should I put it. his Steven Spussy into this.
Yeah, he really put his Spiel pussy into this.
Yeah.
But my feeling on it, because it's stuff like that. For a while, I again, God damn it, why do I feel like West Side Story is going to be my last Jedi in this podcast?
I'm sorry, it'll never happen.
Fuck. But I really
will do you the honor of watching the film again with you with Keegan audio commentary, because I owe you that much. But I will fight you on it.
Fair enough.
Which I mean, we had with The Last Jedi. You were still like, I disagree on this scene, and I was like, here's why you're wrong.
And I mean, I will do the same.
Yeah.
And but stay tuned for Diane Con for a re-review of West Side Story.
But yeah,
to your point, like ultimately my feeling was I was surprised at how much I still enjoyed this film.
mm,
And I think that I will cede points that I'm like, I could see this if I kind of feel the way that you do about it, where it's like if you go into it thinking it's a war, like a commentary on war in a pro sense,
mm,
I would disagree. But I guess you could do it. But I think that the thing that I ultimately take away from it is this is not a war film. This isn't about war. It's about the people. I put it that I think this film is anti-war, pro-veteran, and I think that that's the best way I can put this film.
yeah,
Which I think is an admirable thing to do. I don't think it's fully perfect, but I would say it is. I think it's a perfect Spielberg film. I I don't think it's like it's Schindler's List. I still think is the ultimate Spielberg film.
mm,
Like maybe not my like it is my personal favorite, but it's such a hard watch. I don't blame anybody for it not being
yeah.
their top.
Well, I had a
Um,
conversation with one of my friends the other day, and they were asking me similar to that with like Kills of the Flower Moon. Like I was like, it feels like Kills of the Flower Moon is Scorsese's almost attempt at something similar to Schindler's List, and he was like, yeah, "But would you watch Schindler's List again?" And I was like, "Yes, probably not for a really long time." But I know, and I don't think that I'd sit there and go, "I want to watch Schindler's List today." But I know for a fact that if they were like, "Hey, we're doing a 4K remaster for the 30th anniversary of this film in cinemas," I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll do it." Like, and if they did that for something like Kills of the Flower Moon, like no.
Yeah, like I think that there's a difference, and I think Private Ryan is in a similar way with it. And I mean, ultimately, I think the film does live up with war films, and I think there is just something about this that's different than everything else.
Yeah,
And I think that's why it still like holds its spot in my heart. Um, but yeah, so like that's sort of my feelings on it.
I think it's a really bad film. I think it's probably his worst. No, I'm kidding.
Absolutely. So
I,
on that note,
no, I do. I really love this film as well. I think that it does a lot of things right. It does a lot of things that you just, like I said, it shows you why, like, he's the GOAT. He knows. He knows, you know? Yeah. And so on that, thank you for sharing this film with me.
You're right. Now you're closer.
We do have a reveal for next week's episode as well, which is actually one of my choice, and it'll be our first episode of 2024. And that is the movie Sing Street, which is directed by a director that you love. That's made a couple of, or one other film that is one of your favorites. What was it? It's Begin Again.
One of my Begin Again.
Yeah. So that
John Carney, right?
Exactly, John Carney. So it surprised me so much that you hadn't seen this film, and it's one of my favorites. I've got it on DVD here somewhere, I think.
I was bitter.
Where is it? It is here somewhere. But anyway, yeah, I remember you saying that Sing Street blew up and nobody knew about Begin Again. That being said, I've seen both, so I am the perfect candidate to take you through Sing Street. And I'm really curious to see what you think about it and how you compare it to Begin Again. And I think that Sing Street has one of, if not my favorite, soundtracks for like a musical or music-based film of all time. Like, it has it. I had
like I've
the
heard nothing but
soundtrack
good
for
things.
that on my Spotify Top 100 for like 3 years back to back.
Yeah, that I believe.
Mm.
You seem like the type. Anyway,
Fuck you.
as we guys.
That being said,
as we
you can find me anywhere you want. Kay doesn't exist. I've cancelled him.
that is correct.
Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us. Again, like we said, episodes are generally live for you to join in. So feel free to join us next week when we are live.
Tell us how we did.
And you can follow us at One With The Films across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of those places where people talk about stuff. Yeah, and be sure to check out and follow us in all of those places because we're heaps of fun to talk to. You can also, through our link trees, find links to our individual profiles too, where both of us talk about stuff outside of the podcast. I still do film, TV, movies, all that kind of stuff, and lots of Star Wars conversations. Which, around about the time of this release, I wonder if we'll have an actual Acolyte trailer out, because I mean, I've seen it. many
Yeah.
times.
And I've seen it on your phone.
Shh, bro, you can't say that out loud. He's joking.
I've
for the
not
record.
seen it
He's
on your
joking.
phone.
I didn't text it to anyone. That being said, we should have some more Star Wars stuff to talk about pretty soon, which would be really exciting. So definitely follow along there. And Kay, where can we find you?
Well, absolutely. It's similar to Neff. You can find me anywhere that you can find me. And that's sort of basically the way that I kind of go about this. But yeah, you're going to hear us talking a lot about, especially if obviously the end of the strike's willing. You're going to hear us talking a lot about Andor Season 2, as well as Bad Batch Season 3, which, I mean, oh my God. But yeah, obviously, guys, this is our last episode of 2023. Thank you so much for a wonderful year, and it's just been an incredible journey with you guys thus far. Obviously, I know the strikes kind of gave us a little bit of an interruption, but it was all for the greater good of the film industry. And obviously, we missed being with you guys, and we're very excited to be back with you. And thank you so much for being with us. This means a lot to both Nav and myself, and the fact that you guys want to hear us idiots talk about shit. And I'm glad that you spend your time with us and that you choose to do it this way. Thank you so much for it. And if there is stuff that you would like us to talk about, anything, kind of submit on our little QRs. You could go into our DMs. Do it. Do anything. You know,
Give me
if
something.
you're gonna send it, like, you know, I don't know. But like, I don't know where I was going with that. But the point is that as we go on, anyway. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We want to make sure that you guys are going through your weekly watch list, going through your brews and bullshit, and going through everything that you possibly can with us. And as my friend Raglan says, gasoline. It's not all that great.
Bitch.
Happy 2023, everybody. And
Bye.
welcome 2024.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Well,